Hi, I'm Dan from Buckethead Studios, and today we're going to be building the B-01 helmet from Helldivers 2 for liberty, for democracy, for Super Earth. Let's go. Now, to make this helmet, we're going to be 3D printing it, and I'm going to be using the fantastic files from Galactic Armory. They are all cut up, ready to go. I'm printing on my Prusa i3 Mark II. So to print this, I'm going to be using the file that is split up, and Galactic Armory very kindly provides one that's already pre-sliced, so we can get straight to printing. Now, I'm using white PETG. It did take a while to print out all these pieces, but I was very happy when it was all done, and I could start putting it together. Now, you can use glue to put these things together, but I've found it not very reliable, and I much prefer welding the plastic together. Now, to do this, I use my soldering iron, and I first go in on the inside and weld that seam together. It doesn't have to be neat, you'll never see it. I go ahead and do the same thing to the outside too, just for a bit of extra security. We don't want these pieces coming apart or the seams to split and the paint to crack. That can happen. If there is a bit of a gap between the pieces, that can also happen. I use some of the support material and melt it in just to blend that seam together. Now, it ended up not being the tidiest of print jobs, and I did have quite a lot of things to fix. As you can see here, we had some very rough surface finishes, but that can all be fixed. The first thing I did was go in with my hand mouse sander and give everything a once over with an 80 grit. After that, my preferred method of smoothing is UV resin. I apply it with a sponge brush and then cure it. You can use lamps, but I've found the best thing is just a nice sunny day. Just put it in the sun for a few minutes and that resin will cure nicely and be ready to be sanded. Now, because I printed in white PETG, I thought I would be clever and tint my resin with some resin tint. I did have some in brown. This turned out not to be a great idea. Do not recommend, because the UV resin cures by the light passing through it. The UV light passes through the resin, curing it. When I mixed the tint in, the light couldn't really pass through it because it was opaque. So that led to some really slow curing times. So yeah, do not recommend. Just leave your resin clear, and if you want to see how you're doing, just do what we do later and add a paint layer. Then began the many stages of priming and painting. The first one I do is always a grey primer. It's great just to see what's going on, and there's usually a hell of a lot of things to fix, but that grey primer really helps highlight all the issues that you have, all the little divots, the little bumps, 3D print lines you may still have in the helmet that need fixing. My filler of choice is acrylic spot putty, specifically the green one. I do love using this stuff. You can usually get it in a big tube and it comes out and dries. If you do it thinly, it can dry within sort of 20 minutes, half an hour. I usually leave it a little longer just to really solid up. Mostly overnight is usually what you want to do, but I'm pretty sure you can speed it up if you put a heat gun on it or something as well. But this is my filler of choice. I went ahead and applied it, and then of course we have to get to sanding once again. I repeated this step a few times using grey primer and then a black. The helmet is going to be mostly black and dark colours in the end, so the black is a great indicator to see what's going to show up when we do the final paint job. Now, this is the part of the process that you really can't skip or take breaks on, because this is really what's going to give your helmet that immaculate finish. You can't skip sanding, you can't skip filling, you just have to keep going until that helmet is smooth. And I did quite a few rounds of this before I was happy with how smooth it was. Now, sometimes when you put your prints together, they don't quite line up, so here I'm just putting down some of that putty to even out the whole surface. Do it nice and thin. If it's too thick, it really won't cure, or will take so long to cure that it's not worth it. It will just be hard on top and gooey underneath. This spot putty in particular has a bit of bite to it. It will slightly eat into the surface, which is great. It seems to attach itself in that way to the surface, so you do want it to be able to dry. Of course, then comes more sanding. And more sanding. And yep, be prepared to make a lot of green dust. If you use this one in particular, yep, a lot of green dust gets everywhere, very fine. Protect yourself with a proper respirator. It's pretty nasty. Now, I wanted to take my helmet to the next level a little bit, and there are greeblies which attach to this, which are the front grills and then two bits on the side which I'm going to call clasps. There is files for them. I did 3D print one set. just to see what they were like. But then I decided to use my contacts and get some pieces cut in aluminium. It was really handy to print them out first because I could get a really great size reference. From that I could draw vector files and get them sent off to be cut. The pieces turned out really great and they really didn't need a lot of work to get them finished. I decided that the vents were going to be a bit more functional, just to let some air in the helmet should I decide to actually do the rest of this costume one day. So I wanted the vents to be functional, so I decided to drill out the section behind just so we can get a bit of airflow into the helmet. I also decided that I was going to do quite a bit of kit bashing on this helmet. I'm not too worried about it being so accurate to the game. I just wanted it to look kind of cool. So one of the things I did was replace this back part of the helmet. This is where the cryo tube in the game attaches to the helmet. I had some spare bits from a lightsaber. This is a episode 1 and 2 Obi-Wan Kenobi lightsaber, and I had a spare emitter that was a different blade size. So I decided to kit bash this onto the helmet. I just removed that section with Forstner bits and my Dremel, and then was able to attach it in. For the circular parts inside, I used a piece of a hard drive. If you look for hard drive parts, you can find lots of parts like this online. I usually try and find job lots of stuff like this because it's really good for kit bashing. There are two little rivets that go each side of the helmet, which look like part of its construction in-game. But these have kind of been sanded flat when I was working on them, so I decided just to replace them with real metal rivets. I just needed to drill out a little hole. It was really easy to drill into the 3D printed plastic. And then just glued in two little aluminium rivets each side. I do love it when it gets to the point where it's almost ready. You can see all the bits are sanded and it's almost ready for that final paint job. I also just glued some little pieces of mesh behind those vent details just to add a little bit of extra and disguise the hole. Also just makes it look a little bit more legit. I painted everything once again in that solid black, and then I was able to go in with my airbrush and add the different colors. First was the metallic, which goes over actually most of the helmet. There's different ideas on how this helmet's painted in game. It can be all black with different matte and gloss finishes. How Galactic Armory did it and how a lot of people are doing it are with gunmetal colors. So I used a All-Clad 2 magnesium, and this was my gunmetal-y color that I applied to most of the helmet. After that, it was time to add the yellow stripes, and now you can follow in-game designs. There's quite a few designs in-game for these, but I just decided to wing it. There seems to be a lot of customization in Helldivers as well, so I decided to just do my own paint job inspired by the game. So I added some stripes on one side and then a little triangle on the other, just to be a little different, make my helmet a little bit more unique. The demasking process is always very satisfying. To do this chipping on there, I use liquid latex. If you want to see a more detailed tutorial on that, I have painting and weathering videos on how to do that on my Clone Trooper armor. You can go and check that out here. But yeah, I just use liquid latex and apply it with a stick, and it always gives this fantastic chipped paint effect. It's very Star Warsy, but it worked really well on this as well. After this painting, it was time to attach all the greeblies. I glued in the vents, nice and easy, just a bit of super glue on the back. And for the side clasp, I did a bit more kit bashing. I bought some bike valves, a little job lot of 10 of them on eBay, and just to get these tiny little knurled pieces, which seem to be part of the details on there. And then for the parts at the back, I just kit bashed the rest of it. It's not entirely game accurate, but I just think it looks cool and a bit better than the 3D printed ones. Now, even at this point, with the helmet all painted and all the things attached, I think it looks fantastic, but it's time to add a little bit more weathering, a bit more grime and dirt, just to tie all this paint together and just unify the whole piece. I like using water mixable oil colors for this. They give a lovely sort of greasy effect, and you can thin them with water just like acrylic, and use water also to mop up. So if it goes on too heavy, you can just use water to wipe it all away. And because they're oil, they won't dry. I've found usually applying it like this in weathering, they tend to take about a week or so to set up and dry and not come off on your hands. So you get a lot of working time, but you also have to have a bit of patience afterwards just to let that sit and dry. I used a quick and dirty method to do the skulls on the side and just masked around a printout. These were then just painted white, and I painted in the eyes in black. The faceplate I attached with elastic, just like Galactic Armory did, because I also have a big head. And the visor I bought, and that was just hot glued in. After that, the helmet was done. So let's take a look. So there we are, guys. That is the B-01 helmet from Helldivers 2. I'm really happy with this one. This is the first helmet I've fully 3D printed in my workshop and finished and put together. So I'm really happy with how it turned out. Do remember to like and subscribe. And of course, I will see you guys in the next video. And until then, take care. Bye-bye.